Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast on grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and every episode I talk with a guest about someone important in their life, someone that they've lost, and what role food played in the relationship. This week I'll be talking with a friend of the show, Devin, host of the Culinary Convo podcast. This is actually Devin's second time appearing on this show, and I've had a chance to guest on his podcast multiple times as well, and it's a really fun listen. If you're even remotely interested in food past just what you're going to eat for dinner that night, I highly recommend checking it out. Devin does a great job of putting together fun content around different states throughout the United States, different time periods, and he also focuses on local food from his area in Oregon, and it's just a great show. He's also doing a really fun series right now on the Great British Bake Off, so if you're a fan of that show, I highly recommend it. I will say also up top that we do have some new listeners from our last episode with Martina or King Kogi from YouTube. For those of you that are joining for the first time after that one, thank you so much for the wonderful response I received on that episode. There was definitely an increase in the amount of viewers. The feedback I got was really positive. And at the risk of sounding corny, I just really personally appreciate it. To get that kind of response to the show has been amazing. This is very much a labor of love, and to have any people that connect with it and find something positive from it, that means a lot to me personally, so I just want to say thank you. I do hope you'll stick around. I hope if you enjoy the episode today, you'll go and rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I hate asking for this. I know it's always awkward when a podcast host is asking for ratings, but it does help. So if you enjoy the show, throw 5 stars on there. If you don't enjoy the show, let me know how you feel about it. Let me know what can make it better. I really want this to be a show that can help people if they are going through grief, loss, or if they're just interested in conversations with interesting people. I hope I can provide that to you. I will say this episode is going to be a lot of fun. Devin's going to talk with us about a friend of his from college who introduced him to Korean food. I really enjoy talking with him about that, and just, hearing about a good friend at a time in his life when he needed one. It was really a lot of fun, and I always enjoy talking to Devin. So I hope you'll check out the podcast today and enjoy it. I hope you'll check out Culinary Convo. I just will acknowledge up top, as always, there is no discussion of death this week, but there is talk on sensitive topics like grief, loss. That is the gist of the show. But that being said, please be mindful as you listen. Please enjoy. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is friend of the show and host of the Culinary Convo podcast, Devin. Devin, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, it is my pleasure to join on here, and I love coming on. I've loved the last couple episodes with Jake and everything like that. It's great. Great to be back.
Yeah. Devin was one of the first guests I ever had on. I've actually had a chance to go on your show now several times. And, I know we always promote at the end, but I love the Culinary Convo podcast. I love the amount of effort you put into it. Content I always think is cool. And I just a big fan. So it's always nice to have you back on.
Yeah, no, it's really fun to do. I love having you on. It's fun to banter back and forth with the info that I gather on my little info dumping. Whether it's mapping the culinary world and I'm learning about a new country or a plate in time, and you're figuring out the years that you were like a kid and you don't remember it quite well. Like we did our episode over 1997, and that was it was just a blast from the past. It was so great. And the other one, United Foods of America, going over each state's food. Like I said, I always learn and hear about foods that it's like, no, I think I know that state inside and out. And I start hearing some of the foods and I'm like, are you sure that's like where that is? Like, and then you're looking at pictures and you're like, yeah, that's where it's at. Like, dang. And so, yeah, it's been super duper fun. Kind of like what we talked a little bit before. Like this whole podcasting thing, it becomes a small but eclectic creative world. It's really great.
Yeah. I love that piece of it. And just getting to be on the show and just, going on your show, I've learned things, foods that I'm like, I want to try. There was, the slopper, I think, that we talked about on the episode around Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was telling my wife about this the other day because I don't remember how it came up, but just this idea of like there's a burger in Colorado. It's called the Slopper, and if you see it, it is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, totally. It has, not only is the name its sound that it makes, but visually when you see it, like you said, that you're like, yeah, no, I don't know what else to call it. Like that is a slopper.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I mean, I'm sure one of these days Burger King, they're gonna try to encroach
Oh
on that.
God.
Like a Whopper, slopper. Like I could see how they might try to do that. If they do, the king needs to come in just drenched in chili and like chili peppers, everything. Right.
Oh my.
Like he
Well, I
can't be
don't.
clean. He can't have a perfect coat. He's got to be covered in stuff, you know.
I'm just picturing the Burger King version. It's just a bowl, just of a wet burger. And honestly, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
say it. What they would do at that point, I think we have to break out the guillotine. I think it's time to
Totally. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if the king decides to make a slopper, I think it's time to have a little food revolution.
Right. Right. And that's the other thing too is, Burger King, I've always said I don't understand how they do so well because we're Americans. We believe in democracy. How did we let this king just come in and act like everything's fine? Like, no, we need like, I don't know, El Presidente burger or something.
So,
Like we need something that is more democratic in our
n-
fast food ways,
now, see,
That's yeah.
I've thought about this for a long time, and my wife and I have a running joke where I tell her I'm going to open a burger shop one day called Burger President because I'm an
Yeah.
American. And a Burger President, I've got a 5 point plan for your burger. I don't know what
There you
I don't know
go.
what those points are
Yeah.
yet, but
Right. Right.
I put a lot of thought into this. I would love to have president themed burgers. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, the
you got the George,
Jefferson, the
yeah, like
yeah.
the George Washington. Okay, it's got cherry preserves on it. The Obama burger. It's Hawaiian. It's got a slice of pineapple. The
Oh,
the
yeah.
Trump burger. It makes your hands look tiny, or
Yeah.
it's like little
And it
slider hand.
stains your hands with orange and it
Yeah,
just yeah.
it's got Russian dressing on it. You know,
Yeah. That see, dude, you're onto something, man.
I
Whether it's a comedian doing like a prank pop-up type of thing or like somebody who has like an actual truck, dude, somebody call Andrew. Like burger president burger, like get it going. Cause yeah, I can't imagine some of them. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing though, is like Woodrow Wilson. I mean, that's just a racist burger, essentially. I don't know what
yeah.
else it would be. He was, yeah, but he wanted peace though. Like that was kind of his thing. So I don't know. Like there's certain presidents that I would wonder, like, why that cheese? And you'd have a 5 point plan. You'd be like, no, we chose this cheese because it's actually aged in the same year that he died. And it's like, oh, there you
Yeah.
go. Okay. Yeah.
Andrew Jackson burger. We just don't sell that one.
Right.
We're not signing off on that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'd have to cut it in half because that's what happened to him. Is essentially when he was a kid, he got hit by a British soldier with a sword because he didn't want to
Good
shine the
lord.
shoes of it. So yeah, you just cut it in half, and it's like that's all we do.
Or
It's
hickory
basically a
smoked.
Jefferson or an Adams burger, but we cut it in half.
Yeah.
We
You'd have
didn't
to
want to give
go
him his own burger.
maybe hickory smoked barbecue sauce because I think his nickname was
There you
Old
go.
Hickory. And
Old
by the way,
Hickory.
this is officially turned into a historical themed burger podcast. We're no longer doing grief and loss.
Yeah, exactly. Grief and loss gone. That we thought, that's we want to liven this up a bit. President burgers. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah,
Yeah.
just all the
Well,
lights come on. American flag waving in the background. Yeah. Oh
I,
yeah.
and to me, it's just the commercials. I think would be that's I don't want to. I don't want a restaurant so that I can make good burgers. I want a restaurant so I can write funny commercials. You
Totally.
know,
Yeah.
I want a guy at a podium with doing the best worst JFK impression. Saying here at Burger
Right.
President, I've got a 5 point plan for your burger. You know,
Yeah. And it's got We're putting lobster on my burger.
Yeah,
It's just
you know?
yeah. Oh yeah, totally. It'd be like those old local car commercials, right?
Oh god,
Like
yeah.
used car lots. You just come out there in a fake. Oh, what is it?
The
Oh
plaid
man,
jacket.
Uncle Sam,
Oh
yeah,
god, yeah.
fake Uncle Sam beard and everything. You're like, come on down to President Burger, where you can get you a good old Abraham Lincoln burger where there's a hole in the middle of it. This is gonna be good. And it's just like, oh man, like, oh, what is he doing? And you're like, next door we got the French Fry Club, where all it is a bunch of French people throwing fries at you. And it's like, oh man, like this is gonna be great.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, man, like, I feel like this restaurant concept went off the rails pretty quick, but, I mean, that guy looked really excited. The thing is, I mean,
Yeah,
he just smoked a whole bunch of meth, that's why he's so energetic, I mean,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't tell him to do it, but we're kind of noticing it made a better product. I don't know
I'm a
how
I
this
just
happened.
I like the energy, that's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, the President Burger, I mean, that would be like I said, I think that is a good idea. I think that if you had a food truck, you could
Oh, yeah.
paint it to make it look like the Capitol building or the White House or whatever. Oh man, and you want to talk about like making fun of people. Oh man, like I promise you, you could make like some type of burger or like, oh, so the burger without the bread, the like whatever they call that, the no carb burger type of whatever,
Yeah.
you just call it a Mitch McConnell special because a turtle can eat it. Like that's the type of stuff that you could do. Like,
When
yeah,
well, no, so we instead of turtle and, you got rabbit food, so that's what a lot of restaurants in the South I don't know if this is popular elsewhere. The salad section, they'll call it rabbit food, so, you could have the turtle food, and it's
uh,
just a picture of McConnell's head on a turtle.
right,
Um,
totally, yeah,
yeah, and I'm sure everyone comes to Our Last Meal for biting political commentary, but
right,
I love
right,
the idea of political themed food. I think it's
right,
funny. I just
yeah, yeah.
something about it.
Exactly. You came into the public space to serve the public, to help enrich your country. And just like SNL, we're gonna pie you in the face. It's gonna happen. It's I mean, you think that it's serious, you think that you're gonna do a great job, and then we come in from the high ropes and we're just like,
Dropping elbows.
yep, dropping elbows. Yeah.
Oh, I will say, I know I told you beforehand. I'll just apologize to the audience now. If I sound off this week, I'm fighting a cold. I shared with you. I got a little kid crud.
Yeah.
Daughter, she came home from school with a little cold, and so now I'm gonna be down for the count for about a week, at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah. She showed up, said, "Here, I found this pet. You can have it." And you're like, "I don't want." She's like, "Have it."
Yeah, and that what is that pet?
And
Oh,
you're
it's a
done.
bug. It's a cold
Yeah.
bug,
Yeah, it's cold bug.
and it's
Yeah.
yours now.
It's yours now. And it doesn't look anything like those like Mucinex commercials where it's just a green blob. Like you don't even see it. Like
No,
it's in the air already. You didn't even know. And yeah, you're done
I
for,
named it
you know?
Sneezy, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
sorry, and now it's mine.
Probably wears a
Yeah.
fedora, sneezy.
I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like an anthropomorphized cold bug that gets you sick would definitely wear a fedora.
Yeah.
Like, I feel
Yeah.
100% confident in that.
Yeah. And a sweater vest. He wants it to clash.
Oh,
That's
but
the
it's not just a
whole
sweater
point.
vest. It's one of those that buttons up and it's argyle.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and they try to act like it's like a Scottish thing, but why the fedora? It's awful. It's awful.
There's one guy listening to this podcast right now in his living room just wearing a fedora and an argyle sweater vest. Like, I thought I looked nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Our
lost the
Last Meal
argyle.
used to be my favorite podcast, and now I can't enjoy it anymore.
I've
And why
lost the
is he
sweater
making
vest
fun of my
wearing.
voice this way? Oh,
That's an entire demographic I've lost out on now. It's like the
right.
sweater vest and fedora contingent. I've completely lost them.
Yeah. Well, as I say on my show, if you want to stop this slander, then Argyle sweater vest people, send in all your photos of your sweater vest and fedoras to ourlastmealpod@gmail.com.
If my inbox floods with that now, I'm gonna post everything I get on Instagram and tag you in every
Yeah.
single one of them.
Yeah. I want to see it. I want to see the fedoras that have the red feather going back. those
Ooh.
are the true G's, right? Like those are your people that were like Jason Mraz. He's a poser. Okay. I was Fedoran before he was Fedoran. So, oh, yeah.
I love fedora. I love fedora as a verb.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's up, bro? You fedoran?
Yeah, you Fedoran. Yeah. We're going to President Burger. Bring your fedora. Yeah,
Oh
you
God.
gotta be Fedoran when we go to President Burger.
So
Yeah.
when Burger President happens, that'll be part of the dress code for the entire wait staff as a fedora. Just
Yep.
a new. It's like why do we wear these? This doesn't even make sense. It's
Totally.
like
And
yeah,
then it
and
literally it's a fedora, but then the rest of it, you're like, no, you have to dress as one of the presidents. So if you're dressing as Obama, you got to wear, suit, blue tie. Oh, you're dressing as George Washington. Okay, well, full regalia, you're going as George Washington. We'll provide it. Like it's
yeah,
fine. You don't have to, workshop it from home, but
yeah,
yeah, good luck.
yeah. Be ready to
Like
put on some stockings and a powdered wig.
right. And then it's also inclusive though, because like basically if you have anybody that is, they have to use crutches or a wheelchair or something, FDR.
There you go.
Done. Done. I'm sure there were other presidents that had like conditions and things like that. And we just don't know because they hid it so well, you
There,
know?
there's got to be. I mean, if you think about it, like there's got to be so much that it's a weird thought. Like how much in history do we just not know and we'll never know?
Right.
Even if people that were like incredibly famous in their time and they've had all kinds of stuff written about them. There's still stuff about them that we'll just never know.
Yeah. John Adams could have had like a huge cyst or a wart on his face and just everybody didn't talk about it. Like,
Oh, like they
they
get a new White
avoided
House paint, like the
right.
new White House portrait painter. They're just like, what are you doing? You can't paint that. You have to
Yeah,
no, start
yeah.
over. We don't talk about that.
He's a freaking president, my guy. You don't do that. Like he
We
got
don't.
elected because of his face, and now his cyst. We get it. It's massive. It's taking over, but you can't just stop. Start over. Scrap this.
Okay, we don't
How's
talk
it going,
about the first
guys?
zit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't talk about the first sit. It's not how this goes. This is man.
See, and
Yeah.
this is where I would be a terrible president for if for no other reason than I would refer to everything I had and did as the first whatever it is. You know?
Yeah. 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 I know. Cuz you kind of in a way you have to have somewhat of an ego cuz it's like, hey,
Oh yeah.
this whole country likes me. Like they like me a
No,
lot. They like me so much. They want me to lead them. Like this
no,
is pretty great.
yeah, no
Yeah.
one's ever ran for office and been like, I guess if you all insist.
Right. You never hear Tibbindness in their like in their inauguration speech. You never like you didn't hear Bill Clinton or George H.W. or George W. be like, "Well, guys, I'm going to try my best. I hope everybody is ready for a good time and we'll see how this goes, you know? Let's stay warm out there, huh? Jacket wearers. It's January. So
Let's just all have fun.
yay me. Yeah, let's have a lot of fun, guys. Woo.
I I would just like for one person getting inaugurated, just so that whenever they say, "Do you swear to uphold the oath of office?" Be like, I guess if I have to.
Right. Exactly. How much of it?
It's like are we talking
Yeah.
like 80-20, yay, nay?
Right.
What's
Right.
the sitch here?
Well, and I'm still waiting on a any type of leader, like we've gotten, I think it's like a couple senators and stuff like that where they don't put their hand on a Bible, they'll put it on the Quran or they'll put it on,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. I'm waiting for the president that's just like, no, you're gonna have to take me at my word here. Like, I'm not even gonna put my hand up for the
No
oath.
wor
Like you're gonna have to take me from a word here. They're like, well, do you swear? I don't swear,
There's gonna
actually.
be somebody out there that's like, you know what? I like that. He's not a sheep. He doesn't put his hand up just because he's told to.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's gonna be somebody that's just like, "That guy stands for freedom."
Yeah.
He doesn't just
Freedom.
do blindly like what other
You can't just
people
make me
want.
put my hand up.
Yeah. Like,
Is
sir, if you don't put your hand up, we cannot fix the problem of your elbow and everything. You're like, I'm not putting it up. I didn't do it for the oath of office. I ain't doing it now.
this is not why we fought in Nam, okay? I'm not doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh
You're
man,
very
I'm telling you, man.
If I ever run
Yeah,
for president, though, I'm just running purely on the platform of I'm not going to make anything better. I'm not going to make anything worse. I'm just going to find out if they really are aliens, and that's it. I'm going to find
that's
out
it.
that, and
Yeah.
like day two, I'm
Right.
quitting.
Right. The what do they call it? One policy. One
Yeah,
policy politician. Yeah.
yeah. It's just
It's
are they aliens?
yeah. Yeah, there was a guy, man, I can't remember if it was 2012 or 2016, that ran on the one policy that he was going to repeal, uh, what was it? The one that basically, Citizens United,
Oh yeah,
where, yeah, it made it to where you could put money into elections. He basically was like, "That is my one platform. Like, I will resign the day after that gets repealed." Like, I will like he's like, "Whoever my vice president is, they will be the new president because that was my only policy is to get rid of that." And it's like, huh, like, and you think about it and it's like, yeah, just getting one thing done at a time each time somebody gets elected. But then it's like, oh wait, there's like a 4-year term. Like, they put too
yeah,
many stipulations on it, you know?
yeah. I mean, I like that, but I want somebody to go the crazy route with it. It's just like I'm going to find out if there's aliens.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
quit,
And
there's
then
no
if
aliens.
yeah, and
If
if
you never
there's
hear from me again,
nothing, yeah, if there's nothing, that just improves President Burger's, menu,
there
really.
you
You're
go.
just like, yeah, if you get if you get the nothing President Burger, we just donate money to, like, I don't know, March of Dimes, whatever. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually a great one.
See? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the nothing. You can also order the nothing burger, which is where we don't give you anything, but we do donate money to local causes.
Yeah, yeah. Or we allow, the homeless to come in and they get their favorite President's Burger,
Now,
like
see, I
whatever.
like that. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
You
telling you.
know, man. Well, Devin, this is fun. I love talking
Yeah.
about. I love that.
Yeah.
Like I said, we turned it into a political themed fast food podcast. Wasn't expecting
Right.
that. However, I do love it. I do want
Yeah.
to go into the topic a little bit because
Totally.
if you've made it this far and you don't know what the podcast is about, fair enough. If this is your first time listening, we did kind of start on an odd note.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
is our last meal. It's loss, it's grief, and it's food.
Yeah.
Devin, one of the reasons
Yeah.
I like having you on is because I think you and I view this similarly, and in a way that a lot of people can relate to is that food is important, not just as fuel, but it's
Totally.
for your soul, and it's for it's a way to build relationships,
Yeah.
and it's something that you can have a connection with somebody about. Um,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people come on the show and they talk about a loved one that they've lost through their passing.
Right.
You came on before and talked about your grandfather,
Yeah.
but that's not the only way that you can lose somebody. And you had a friend you wanted to talk about today, so I'm going
Yeah.
to hand it off and just let you talk a little bit. But
Sure.
I really appreciate you coming on and approaching it a little bit differently.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I just appreciate the outlet of because I've talked about it with close family, my wife, what have you. But yeah, when I was a student at the U of O, University of Oregon, we had like dormitory suites, right? And so I was
Yeah,
in my suite, and you shared a bathroom, and whatever, which was better than like you got a bathroom at the end of the hallway. The showers are at the end of the hallway. Oh man, I would have hated that. But basically, the suite mate that was on the other side of my wall, you really didn't get to see those people like ever. Like, we had our own little private hallway, and it was
yeah,
kind of odd because like basically you'd step outside your door and you're in this hallway, and then there was another door to get out into like the main lobby hallway of your dorm. So it's like kind of this weird thing. And so I would see my suite mate every now and again. We would go and have lunch, or we would go and, go into campus to go to classes, do whatever. Well, the suite mate that I had, he was a good guy. Just we did not see eye to eye, uh, mainly politically. He was a big like Fox News guy. I don't know if he still is. I have no idea, but like he was a big like Fox News guy. He was in the military. He was a Marine Corps veteran,
yeah,
and he really didn't like being a student. And, for somebody who like was still in college at my age, I was like, I like being a student. Like, this ain't that bad. And so, like I said, he was a good guy. Just there was a lot of stuff we didn't see eye to eye on. And so it was like over time, my suite mate, me and him, we kind of like disconnected a little bit. And then it was just one of those things where there was like this little period of time where I was like, who do I like go to lunch and dinner with? Like, who do I
Yeah.
hang out with and like, try to go to campus events or go do what it like, man, this is weird. And so like I was doing that. And then there was one day I was going to classes and I was like locking my door and I look to my left and I see that, the person on the other side of the wall who I never heard him ever. Never heard. He was silent. It was like a church mouse. But I basically look over and it is this like 6'4", 6'5" Asian guy. And that's all I knew at the time. And I'm like, man, that's a big guy, especially for an Asian guy. Like, that is a tall, like, whoa. And he like bolted off. He didn't even look my direction, nothing. And it was like, huh. Like, that's the guy over there. Like, I didn't even know anybody was living in that room. Like, geez. And so I go to classes, and like I said, this little pocket of time just so happened to be like right towards like midterms, right? And
Yeah.
so everybody's staying up late trying to get papers done and all this other stuff. I would do my laundry at what I thought was the perfect time, which was 2:45 to 4 a.m. That was like the perfect time to do laundry because nobody was doing laundry at that time. Like, that was the time to do it. Well, this other guy, he was doing it at that time as well. And every time I would get on the elevator to go down to get my laundry, he would either be getting in the elevator or off the elevator when I'm going back and forth. And he would never say a word to me. So we would look at each other. He would walk right past me. And I'm like, what the heck? And I finally, in my head, I'm like, I got to say hi to this guy. Like, I got to say
You got
something to
to.
him. Right. Like, cause like, I don't know why I see him all the time. Like, there was like in my head, I didn't know why, but I thought of like, movies where like you're being followed or like there's an assassin or a spy. Like, is he a spy or is, like, what's going on? And the only reason is because he wasn't saying anything and he was so quiet and I couldn't. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, then it was like he was coming on the elevator and I'm standing there and I just go, dude, I've seen you like 8 or 9 times. My name's Devin. Like, is it okay if I introduce myself? And immediately after I said that, I'm thinking in my head, like, what if he's not from the US?
Yeah.
Like, like what, because at this point, I don't know where he's from. I don't know his name. I've never heard him speak. So I have no idea if he speaks English, if he, you can make all these assumptions, but it's just like, I'm going to do that. And in the most calm, even tone voice with an accent, he just is like, my name is Yunsung. It's nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh, like, wow. And so I'm just like, hey, man, like, I, so what do you like? What do you do here? Like, what's your major? What's, that kind of thing. And he's like, I'm a master's student and I study game theory. And I'm just like, whoa, like what? And then immediately my brain was like in overdrive of like, I'm making this guy my friend. Like, this guy is gonna be a buddy of mine because he's interesting. He's already interesting in my mind. Like, he's already just somebody that I want to talk to. I want to get to know. And so I'm talking to him and he's like, yeah, I'm from Seoul. South Korea, and I grew up there. And, and just through these chats, I start going back and forth. And it was kind of like this understanding of he was new to the US and I'm this little country bumpkin from Missouri that is in Oregon. And so I can tell him about, the places maybe he hasn't been in the US. And he said, he's like, I've been to Texas. Like I had family in Texas and I stayed there for a few months. And it was literally to get a student visa so that I could study here because you had to learn English. Like you had to learn a certain style of English. And I thought that was
Yeah.
hilarious that he had to learn English in Texas because Texas is like, I just thought in my head, like, that's got to be one of the worst places for a 6'4" or 6'5" South Korean guy to try to learn English. Yeah. I just was like, man, oh man.
Did he say y'all?
No, he did not. He
Okay,
was
so he didn't learn
very
Texas English.
no, he didn't learn Texas English. No, it was a formal education English.
Okay.
But no, he learned it and he was very self-conscious about it. He really was. He was very self-conscious about his English, especially writing. Like
Yeah.
he was since he was a master's student, he was what we called a GTA. It's a graduate teacher's assistant.
Okay.
And basically they have a union. There's all sorts of stuff. Like basically they are a paid employee of the college, but they're also trying to get their master's or their doctorate. And for him, he was trying to get his master's done or was it his doctorate? It was his doctorate. He was trying to get his doctorate done. And so he had already completed a master's program. He was getting his doctorate and he's going through all this stuff. And I'm just like, man, like, what the heck? And so I'm like talking to him about, like, okay, so you've been in Texas, you've done this and that. And for me, it was like, I'm giving him this, like, this is what America type of stuff, this is what it's like. And he can poke and prod at those questions while I got to like poke and prod at questions about South Korea because I knew nothing about South Korea. My grandfather, he fought in the Korean War in the Navy. Other than that, a typical thank you American education system. I really didn't know much about
Yeah.
South Korea at all. And so I'm like talking to him about this and yeah, he's telling me like, yeah, I've already served my 2 years in the military. I, almost got married, but now I've got this girlfriend that's back in South Korea and she's finishing up her master's and all this other stuff. And I'm like, how old are you? Because like at this point, like I'm thinking he's close to my age. And he's like, no, I'm like 34. Like and at the time I'm like 23 or 24. Right. So I'm
So he's
like,
got a good 10 years on you.
yeah, he's got 10 years on me. And I'm just like, oh, dang. Like he's lived this like whole lifetime in his other country before he even got here. And so, I started asking him, like, what are like South Korean weddings like? Like, what are, like food customs that you guys had? Because definitely at that point, I knew nothing of Korean cuisine, Korean food at all. I mean, I
Yeah.
knew nothing. And so he would talk about it, but he was like, we're in these suites. I eat a lot of, convenience food, like, ramen and that kind of stuff. And so I was like, okay, but then it's like shortly but surely we started going to lunch together and I had never had tofu. And he's like, actually, the place that we ate at, it was called Barnhart. It was like a cafeteria style place. They had brunch at Barnhart and all that stuff, but they had like baked tofu type stuff with multiple meals throughout the week for people who were vegetarian or vegan or whatever. And so I asked him, I'm like, I've never had tofu. Like, I've always heard people say it's tasteless. Like it doesn't have
Yeah,
a
it
taste. So you
is.
don't hate it or love it. It's just there. And he's like, no, no, no. Like they have very good like tofu here. Like you need to try it. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And instead, he grabbed like a small little plate and he stacked like 8 pieces of tofu on this plate. And I'm thinking in my head, like, dang, man, like, okay, fine. Like, I get your point, you know? And so I get like a piece or two and I go upstairs, you know, with them because there was like 2 levels you could sit at. And I go upstairs with them. And when we went upstairs, it was odd. Hardly anybody went up there because people didn't want to carry their plates and their drinks and stuff. He liked to go up there because it was quieter.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
so his whole thing was like, if I'm talking to somebody, I want to be able to hear you and like discuss things and go over. He's like, if we're down in that main area, there's plates cranking around, there's people talking, there's, you know, all that. And I'm just like, huh. Like he cares. He cares about talking to me. Like
He wants
this
to
is
have a conversation.
right, right. Like he really like he wants to have a conversation about stuff. And finally, he's just like, he's like, yeah, so here, and with chopsticks, of course, he grabs like 3 or 4 pieces and then he just slides the plate over to me. And I'm like, oh, like, you want me to try all that? He's like, yeah, it's really good. You'll eat all of it. And I'm like, I don't think like all right, whatever. And I tried it and dude, he nailed it on the head. It was amazing. It was like a sweet chili sauce,
Oh, it's so
tofu. Yeah, like it was baked in a like a chicken stock marinade type of thing. It was so good. And I'm like, wow, this is good. And he's like, yeah, like it's always really good. Like it's good here. Like this is, you know, they do a good job at it. And I'm like, yeah. And he's just like, yeah, my mom, she used to make you know, this type of tofu and she would, you know, put it in soups and different things like that, but it's silken tofu. And so then we start talking tofu, right? Like what is the
yeah.
difference between firm and extra firm and all these things? And he's going over it. And so it was one of those things like, I think once we incorporated the food element, yeah, our friendship like took off after that. Like we would talk all the time. Anytime that he basically wanted to take a break, you know, he'd knock on my door and he'd be like, "Hey, you know, you want to walk or you want to, you know, like, you know, go downstairs and get like a drink or do this and that." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." You know, we'd go, and so midterms finish up, and so we're getting now towards like finals of the term, and we go down and I'm doing laundry at like 2:45 in the morning. I see him down there and I'm like, "Hey, young son, like what's going on?" And he's just like, "I'm just doing laundry, you know." I was like, "Yeah, okay." And he's just like, "I don't know, but uh I feel I don't know, like and I'm like, "Oh, do you feel homesick?" And he gives me this weird face and he's like, "Absolutely not." I'm like I'm like, wow, Devin, you
Way to
really
read the room.
yeah, exactly, swing and a miss on that, and he points over at this table, and he goes, "Don't you have a a ping pong set?" And I go, "Yeah. Yeah, I do." Like, I bought one specifically because the ones that our dorm had, they were crap. The rubber was coming off of them. Ping pong balls were dented in and all this stuff. I had my own ping pong, like 4 paddles with like 8 balls, and I would play with like other people. I would, whatever. I would just take it down there. And if somebody came in that room and I was bored, I'd be like, "Hey, do you guys want to play ping pong? I brought my own set. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
using the bill, you know." And they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." Well, I was like, "Yeah, like, yeah, Yansang, I got." He goes, "Yeah, I'm, like the boom, boom, boom." I'm like, "Energizer Bunny?" And he's like, "Yeah, energized, energized. That's the word." And I'm like, "Oh, nice." And so he was like hyped up. Like, even though it was like 2:45 in the morning, he was hyped up. So we start playing ping pong, and I am not kidding. Yunsung was like light years ahead of me in ping pong that I didn't even realize because I thought I was good. I played ping pong when I was a kid because my grandma had a table. We had our own table. Like I thought I was pretty good. And Yunsung, he's like curving the ball. He's doing all this type of stuff that I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, man, you are really good. And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of rusty, like what I'm like,
So he
Yunsung,
really is gonna humble brag?
he was humble bragging. He was just like, he's like, yeah, I'm okay. Like I'm rusty. And I'm like, whatever. And so we would start, and we're playing and going back and forth. And he tells me, he goes, yeah, when I was like in middle school, I went to a ping pong camp like over the
Really?
summer. Yeah, like he's like, I played ping pong like for an entire summer because that was what the camp was for. Like that's what I did.
That's awesome.
And I know. And I was like, whoa, like that is so cool. Like we treat it as such a joke here. We play it kind of like billiards or something,
Yeah.
like sure there's a sport, but it's for kids. Like it's not meant for, and
I
it's
was
like, no, he was like, I'm good at it. Like I'm
Yeah.
really good at it. And
We have
he
a ping
was,
pong table. I
yeah.
was gonna we have a ping pong table in my office, and, like, people get into it, they get competitive,
Oh,
and if
totally.
it's one of those things, it's like you said, it's easy to kinda poke fun at, but, I mean, if you play it, like, if you really play it, it will get your whole body involved.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's what it was playing with him. In terms of our whole dorm, I think I beat everybody at ping pong constantly. Like that was the thing that kept happening. And then Yunsung showed up and I didn't even know it, but it was like he is my biggest competition
There
at
you
ping
go.
pong. Like me, and I didn't even know it. And he was right. That night, he was like rusty, rusty. He basically he did not have all of his like facets there, right? And so I'm like, okay, like I see kind of how this is. And we start playing for real and it's like crazy. Like he starts whipping out all sorts of stuff that I had never seen. Just where basically the ball is coming at me faster than I can expect. So I have to do like these defensive paddle moves and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like he's super good at this. And so then it was like another thing that, at the end of a long day of like studying or doing whatever, we could go and just play ping pong. And then we'd go and eat dinner, come back, play ping pong some more, talk about whatever's going on. And, it was one of those things where like him being a doctoral student, I would ask him what it was like getting a doctorate degree and
Yeah,
like
what'd he
what it
say?
was like to try to, explain his game theory. And he was doing it over World of Warcraft and like the cultural implications of Warcraft and how, some kids in South Korea, they were like addicted to it and they'd go to these, PC bongs, which were PC gaming, like, store areas where you could buy drinks and just sit and play games. And he was talking about how like he had studied this inside and out. And I'm like talking to him about that. And I'm just like, man, like, I'm like, so what did your parents do? And he's like, oh, my mom and my dad are French literature professors in South Korea. And I'm just like, what the heck? And I start talking to him. He knows Korean, he knows English, he knows French, and then I think he knew some Chinese and Japanese as well, but he wasn't like fluent in it. And so he knew like 4 or 5 languages. And I'm just like, this guy is like an international man of mystery. Like this is so crazy. Like because at this point I had never met anybody like him before. And I think it was purely because I really hadn't talked to anybody that was not a US, born, or had been in the US for a long time. Like he was purely, like from South Korea not even a year ago. And he talked about how he lived in France for like a year or two after, high school. And then he went into the military and like he's like giving me this timeline and it's like I said, it just reinforced the whole like, yeah, he's lived like this whole lifetime before me. And he's got all these like life experiences, languages. Yeah, it was crazy. And he eventually started telling me like, yeah, I'm gonna like, I'll show you, I'll try to show you like legitimate Korean food. And I'm like, "Okay. Like, what do you mean legitimate Korean food?" And he's like, "Well, like authentic, like where it's, like the stuff that I would eat all the time." I'm like, "Okay." And so he took me to a couple different places in Eugene that were your run of the mill, like it would be like a Japanese sushi place, but they'd have a couple things on their menu that were, you know, that he could tell like, yeah, they've got somebody who's Korean or something in the back because they wouldn't make this way, or they wouldn't, have this or that. Like this is kind of what it is. And so we would try stuff. And then there was a place, I think it was called Uishi, which that is delicious and Japanese, I believe. Um, and it was odd because basically we go in there and they had banchan, which is the small little dishes of like kimchi, fermented fish, radishes that are pickled, pickled fish, seaweed salad, that kind of thing. There's these little dishes. I had never had kimchi before. I had never had katsu before, which technically is Japanese, but it's very popular in Korea as well. And I got to eat all these different foods. And it was like we go to try to pay. And yeah, it was so odd that he just immediately was like, yeah, no, like I'll pay for it. Like it's fine. And I'm like, "Are you sure? Like, I can do it." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. Like, anytime you try things, like, I should pay, what have you." And he had done that at the place before, and I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Like, I think I should pay this time." And he was like, "No, no, no. Like, in South Korean culture, whoever is older, like, you help pay for those things. Like, you take care of those who are younger than you, and you do that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so it was like one of those things where he was going around, doing all these things. And it was just like, yeah, it was just one of those things where I just remember being overjoyed that I was sharing food with him and that I was getting to understand not only South Korean, culture, food, different things that he had done, but just grabbing a lot of like preconceived things that were in my head. And he was just absolutely just either turning it on their head or confirming what I had heard. And it was fun to have that like cultural exchange. I had never had that before.
So, Devin, do you think him, sharing food that he grew up eating that, I guess he had more of a cultural connection to, do you feel like that helped you appreciate who he was or where he was from more? Did that help connect in any way?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It was like, it's kind of like when you meet and talk with people and you're first meeting people, there, at least for me, I don't know if it's because like I have a weird thought pattern, I have no idea, but it's almost like you see this kind of a shell of a person. You know what they look like on the outside. You may not know what they sound like. You may not know what they enjoy like day to day, because you could be meeting in like a business formal type of thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you're meeting them at a movie theater. It's like, oh, they like these kind of movies. Like it's like there's certain things, but like it's almost like the second you share food and you share the significance of that food to them, that's, and it may sound like kind of weird and whatever, but it's like that's when the bones and the muscle and the skin and everything, that's when it's like this is a full bodied person who has had this experience and these things. And every person is like that, but it's almost like before you actually dive into those things with somebody, like I said, it's like you're looking at a shell. You're looking at something that's like this almost posterior type of thing. Like they're
Yeah.
trying to look a certain way. They're trying to give off a certain type of energy or a certain type of vibe of like, I'm an academic, I'm into skateboarding, I'm into punk music, I'm, whatever. And then you start talking to them about the reasons why they like certain foods or certain trends or what have you, and it like fully forms that shell. It has insides now, and you realize that it's this whole person that's had this whole experience. And not only are they this whole person who's had this experience, but they are taking the time, the effort, the care, and the willingness to share it with you. And it's humbling. Like it feels like you got let in a room that he doesn't just open that door for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't hang out and give kimchi to all of his students or whatever. Like this is something that he's like, I'm not, I'm going to do this because one, it helps me feel more connected to home, but it also like, this is what I enjoy. These are the things that I do. And so, yeah, it was like, wow, like I've actually made a real true friendship with this guy, you know?
Yeah. And it is
Yeah.
really cool to get to share something you love with another person.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, just
Yeah.
that idea of like a thing that, even as something as simple as food, or as complex as food, honestly, because I think you
Yeah.
can go the spectrum.
Yeah.
There is something really cool about just being able to, especially I've been lucky enough to work with people from other parts of the world, in my day job. And it's always so cool to me to get to talk to them about the stuff that they grew up eating or the stuff that I grew up eating. And if we have a chance to eat together and say, okay, hey, try this thing. This is something I grew up with. There's always so much to that. It it does kind of make you feel a little more rooted in who they are as a person.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because usually there always is a story that goes with it,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't they don't just sit down and they're like, "Yeah, no, this is foie. This is, chicken pho and ate it when I was younger."
That's it. No, my mom made this whenever I would feel sick, you know?
Right, right. Or we had this for breakfast all the
Yeah.
time. And if we had it, it was like a special treat. We knew something was going on, or, it's like those little hints of like subtleties to
Yeah.
somebody. And yeah, that's how it was with him. Like when we were trying the little banchan, I think he could see my hesitancy
Yeah.
because at the time I was not a pickle fanatic. I didn't like a ton of pickled things. So when he was describing kimchi, and it's like, yeah, it's this super spicy thing, which at the time I didn't like spice. And it's pickled, and I'm like, yeah, that's not good. And it's fermented like sauerkraut. And I'm like, I don't like sauerkraut. Like, what is the and he's just like, it's good, just try it. Like, I have not steered you wrong, just try it.
Yeah.
And I did, and God, man, he was right.
Yeah.
I to
Kimchi
this
is
day,
amazing.
kimchi yeah, it's like I have it in my fridge always. Yeah, it's everywhere. Anytime I see kimchi ramen or
Oh,
like quick noodles, like that kind of thing. Yeah, gotta get the kimchi version of it. Yeah, and so like he went over all these things that to this day, I get so many Korean things because he kickstarted that for me.
yeah.
This love of Korean food in all of its forms. The super spiciness, the super pickly, the super fermented, the fishy, the, black sesame seed, this or I mean, everything about like Korean food he imparted that in my life and it has changed it for the better 20-fold. Just today, Yami Buy, which is like an online store. It's got Chinese, Japanese, Korean stuff. I got a bunch of tteokbokki, Korean tteokbokki, the rice sticks. And then I got bulgogi marinade for beef and then bulgogi marinade for chicken and pork. And then I've got bulldog 2 times spicy hot sauce along with their carbonara bulldog, like all these Korean things that I can't live without. Like my wife understands now, like, yeah, if we run out of tteokbokki, I'm like sad. I'm like, man, I gotta wait like 4 or 5 days for tteokbokki to come in. Like, ugh, and tteokbokki wasn't even a food that he showed me. And I think he knew it's like that. You're not going to find that unless it is a Korean, restaurant. It can't be like a Japanese or a Chinese one. And they just have a couple dishes of like, that is a Korean thing. Like that is, so it's like one of those things where I'm trying all these things and like gochujang, the fermented, pepper paste, very common now. Back
Yeah.
in 2013, 2014, when I was trying it, it was common, but it was common in restaurants. It seemed like it wasn't very common in people's homes. And now it's like, yeah, you can't look in my fridge and not see a little red tub of gochujang. Like I add it to so many things. I'll add it to eggs. I add it to like anything that I can. And it's one of those things where like whenever I see those things or I, watch a show that has Korean food or, any of those things, like I immediately kind of draw that back to Yunsung every time. And he told me like what his name is. His name was Yunsung Lee. And so I guess in Korea it is flipped. So it's like if he was presenting himself and it'd be Lee Youngsung,
Yeah.
right? And it's like one of those things where he was like, yeah, it means like tall evergreen or like bright evergreen. And I'm just like, you're in the evergreens, like you're you're in Oregon where there's evergreens everywhere. Like that's crazy. And I would ask him like what certain things meant in Korean or how you would say it in French. And so like one time we were walking past this little store. It was kind of like a corner market type of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I got to go to the ATM and get money, and he's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. And so I start walking that way and I ask him, I'm like, yeah, in French, uh, how would you say that? And he's like, I'd probably just say like, I need to go to the bank. And I'm like, yeah. So how would you say that in French? And he's like, je dois à la banque. I'm like, oh my God. Like, how do you like, wait, what? And so like, he's like, je dois à la banque. And I'm like he's trying to break it down for me. And I'm just like, man, I am a typical American. Like I can't formulate this, but to this day, I remember that phrase, je dois aller banque. Like I need to go to the bank. And it's like, there's things like that it is a core memory of like what I remember being. I don't want to say like embarrassed or ashamed, but almost like I'm a novice. I'm completely
Yeah.
new to this. Like I'm ignorant. Tell me like how this works. Like, and he did that for so many things for me. And I can't, I knew in the back of my mind, like when we were having these things or when we would talk or when we would go over, like there was no way on God's green earth that I could repay him for that. Like there's not me talking about American stuff. He could figure it out every now and again, right? Like before, like he would ask a question and most of the time as he's asking it, I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. And he's like, oh, okay. That's what I thought. Like, like, yeah,
Well, I was gonna ask. I mean, it almost sounds like it was a friendship, but even more than that, it sounds like he was almost, in a way, kind of like a big brother or like a mentor.
totally. Yeah, totally. He was. That the way I looked at him was that in Eugene at the U of O, he was like basically not only an academic mentor in the sense of like he talked about what it's like to get a master's and a doctorate and like what languages I should learn. Cause I told him, I was like, man, I took like 5 years of Spanish. I never learned it. Like I never got, and he's like, I wouldn't be too worried about that. I'm like, oh, but like, I mean, like 4 or 5 languages, like easy for you to say, like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? Like and he's just like, you only need to know English. Like that's all you need to know. everywhere you go, there's going to be somebody who knows English. And I'm like, I don't know about that, man. Like, I think that and he's like, if you go to France, they know English. He's like, every country learns their language and the secondary language is English pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you don't need to learn a second language. And I was like, yeah, but what if I want to? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, that's how you connect with people. And I'm like, well, then I probably would want to learn that language. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, if
So
you didn't learn English, you're not connecting with me. And he's like, well, yeah, but I want to connect with people. I'm like, well, so do I. He's like, yeah, that's what makes you a good person. And I'm like, uh, like,
so I mean, even just perspective there. I mean, he took it from you
yeah,
learning a language, like what's gonna be beneficial to me, like what's gonna actually let you learn, like meet people and get to know
right,
them.
right, totally. And he knew it. He was like, yeah, you don't, if you want to know who they are, you need to know their language. But if you're just wanting to talk, do English. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. And so it's like one of those things where, like, yeah, he definitely was like a big brother figure, just in the sense of it just seemed like he was so much more worldly than I was. Cause it's like, I've been to the Caribbean on a cruise and I've, gone to different states. And other than that, when he's like, I know the difference between a medium tier and a expensive tier of French wine, depending on the region. Like, that's what and he did. That was stuff that he knew, like, inside and out. Just like, we would go into like a Safeway or something, and he would like look at a whole wall and just be like, those two are really good. That one is probably really good, but it's overpriced. This one is like, and he would go through it, and it was way more nuanced than like what I had ever seen wine. It's like, I tell my wife, people ask all the time, like, do you like reds or whites? Right. In
Yeah.
terms of wine. And I'm like, I like wine, just wine. I like all of it. Like, all of it is really good. And so, like, as he's going through it, he kind of said the same thing. He's like, all wine is good. It's just by
Diff-
varying degrees. Yeah.
different levels
Like,
of good.
right, right.
I love that though. I love people that are really knowledgeable about something, and that they can just nerd out about it.
Right.
Whenever
Totally.
when you find somebody that they know a lot about something and they're really interested in it, because there are people that know a lot about something, but you can tell they hate it. You
Right.
had those teachers in high school that they know algebra like the back of their hand, and they
Right.
hate algebra.
Right.
They can talk
Exactly.
about algebra. They will talk about algebra, but they hate it. But then
Yeah.
you had the chemistry teacher who's like, I'm going to tell you why lithium is amazing. And then they can go off on
Right.
a rant about it. And you're like, yeah, lithium's kind of cool.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They're like, yeah, I named my dog Barium. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
And you're like, that's
like,
weird. And then they get done the lesson. You're like, all right, yeah, I'm going to get a puppy name and borrow
yeah,
him. But
exactly.
like
Yeah.
that idea, like whenever somebody, when they know a lot about something and they really like it and they're willing to share it with you, that is just so, there's just
Yeah.
something so amazing about that.
Totally. The enthusiasm is infectious. It's
Yeah.
just like, it totally transfers over. And that's why I'm talking about Sung, is because, like, it's one of those things where my first year of college, he was, on the other side of that wall, and I would talk to him. I'd hang out with him. We'd play ping pong. We'd eat together. We'd go, to all these different things. Summer hits, and he's still a GTA. And so he is basically like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be here for the summer. And I'm like, yeah, so am I. Like, we should hang out. We should do so. And we did. We hung out a couple times, and he was instead of the suites where we were, I was in an apartment that was a 3-story walk up, which sucked. I hated that place, but it was a place to live,
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things where he was in what the graduate students, they had like it's hard to call it a house. It looks like a house, but it's like a big building with concrete floors and like all this stuff. But basically, it had living quarters for graduate students that were isolated. They were actually, they had their own bathroom, they had their own kitchen, they had, their own bedroom with like a window that you could look out. And so for him, especially, he's like, yeah, this is like a huge upgrade. Like, this is
Yeah. It's
great.
not bad.
And Yeah. And it was a little closer to campus in terms of like where it was located. It was over by the basketball stadium. And so like he could just walk around the stadium and he's right on campus. And and so like I'm hanging out with him, and that's when he started cooking for me.
Wow.
And yeah, he let me try, this kimchi that he said was like the closest thing to his mom's kimchi, because his mom couldn't like make it and then bring it,
Yeah, of course.
and those kinds of things. So it's like she would try to find in the store like the closest thing, and it was like this huge like jar of kimchi. I was like, whoa. And he's like, yeah, no, you got to try it because I know you like kimchi. I'm like, yeah. So I'm like trying the kimchi that he's making. He made a Korean style steak, which I had never had before. And then he's making like a French salad and then like pasta with all this. And I'm like, holy crap. Like he actually knows how to cook like pretty
Yeah.
well. And then and then he starts giving me like pretty much a gift every time I go there. So like the first time I go there, he gives me a niyoguri, which is it's like seafood style Korean noodle ramen. And he's like, don't be intimidated by the smell. And I'm like,
That's an
what?
interesting way to phrase something when you give it to
Exactly.
somebody.
I'm like, Yunsung, like, is this gonna smell like a dead fish? Like, what is this? Like that you're giving me? And he's just like, no. Like it's very salty smelling, like fish smelling, but I promise you, it's not as strong as the smell is. Like, just try it. And I'm like, all right, man. Like, boy, oh boy, I'll give that a shot, And so like I try it, and of course, like even right now, I've got niyoguri in my cabinet. Like it was great, and he's right. The pungent smell of fish, I think for some it would turn them away, but then the second you try it, it's like these levels of savory Korean mushroom with, like almost like a scallop type of, mussels and those
Yeah.
kinds of things just built into this flavor. And then it has these noodles that are like actually thick and substantial. And you're just like, it's comforting. It's such a comforting little dish. And I'm like, dang, like he knew this type of stuff. And I just like, and then it was like the next time I go over there, he gets me whatchamacallit, it's the packaged like it looks like ramen, but it is intended to be a snack. You crush it, and then you put the spice packet in it. You shake the bag, and then you eat the little pieces of ramen with spice dust on it. Like that is what it's intended to be. You are not supposed to cook it like ramen. And it's got this guy. He's got like red hair on the front, and it just shows him like banging the bag, you know. And so, like, if you're a kid in the U.S., I don't know how many times like beef or chicken ramen, you're like, at first you may not know how to cook it, and so you're just eating dry ramen and you're putting sauce packet over the top and you're like, salty, it's like potato chips. And you're just yeah, Koreans, they knew about that decades ago. They're like, yeah, no, we've been doing that for years. Like, what are you doing? And so it's like, just all sorts of stuff. Every time I go over there, I would get to try something new, or there would be something that he got from his parents, like a care package or something. And there was one time where he basically said, he's like, I need a desk. And so like the new fall term had started, all the students are back, and he's like, I need a desk, and it's becoming, a pain. And I'm thinking in my head, like, great. Like, what do you mean? like I don't understand. And he's just like, well, like, I need it to be a big enough desk that it can act like a table, like I can eat on it. I'm like, okay, makes sense. And he's like, yeah. And it also has to have space for me to like grade papers and do things for papers, but it also has to be sturdy enough to hold, computer, monitor, everything like a computer desk would. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I think I found one through IKEA. And I'm like, yeah, there's one up in Portland, which is like, from Eugene, that's about like a 2-hour drive. And I'm like, yeah, there's probably one up in Portland. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, have you checked like shipping and that kind of stuff? He's like, yeah, yeah, I ordered it and then they're gonna ship it, what have you. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, why is he telling me this? And he pulls out his phone and he starts and he's like, "Ah, yeah, see, here it is." And I look at it and he thought nothing of it, but I I immediately like jumped in because when I looked at the shipping cost of this desk, it's a 2-hour drive, mind you. So you're talking a little over 100 miles
Yeah.
to ship this thing. It was like almost $250 just
Good
for the
lord.
shipping. Yeah. And I told him, I said, dude, you like, I would not get this desk. And he's like, well, why? Like, I'm like, one, they're not building it for you. Like, that's a
Yeah.
big thing. Like, if they built it for you and the shipping costs that much and it comes built and everything, like, maybe that's worth it. Maybe. But like, that's a lot of money, man. Like, to just blow on a shipping cost. And he's like, oh,
And then you still
yeah.
have to do work.
Right. And then, yeah, you got to build it. And so I'm just like, dude, that's not like, that's going to suck. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And I'm like, Yun Sung, like, when do you need this desk by? And he's like, like, I mean, yesterday. Like he basically like he needs it immediately. Like he doesn't have like he basically has this like little diner table and that's all he's had. And he eats at it, he grades papers at it, he does it's like, dude, like no. So I told him, I said, listen, like I get done with my classes, at a certain point. It was a Friday. I'm like, we're gonna drive up to Portland and we're gonna get your desk. Like I have a truck, we'll put it in the back of the truck and we'll drive it back. And he's like, okay, like if you want to, like, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like me and you, we can drive up there, we'll get it, we'll drive back. And he's like, okay, like, yeah, all right, And so we're driving, and so it's like me and Yun Sung on a little road trip, and we're driving, and he wants to stop at a rest stop because he's like, what are rest stops? Like, what is this? Like, what do people do here? And so we
Yeah.
go, and he's like, it's just vending machines and bathrooms. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you
Like,
rest
yeah.
here. That's it.
Yeah, you rest here. That's all you do. Like, you got a dog? Yeah, it'll pee or poo around here. That's basically what happens. Like,
Although, I mean, I can see how if you've never been to one, I mean, I'm not gonna say I
totally.
wouldn't want to do the same thing. One of the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
episodes
and
of this, one of the
yeah,
best episodes of This American Life I've ever listened to. They spent time with these people that worked at a rest stop, and it's
yeah,
just interesting just to hear.
totally. Well, and now I know just from like Reddit and other things like that, like it is hard to talk about the concept of space, like land area, with people who don't live in the US.
Yeah,
Like people who live in London, you could drive for 9 hours and you cross the entire country, right? But
yeah,
for us, you can drive 9 hours in Texas and you're in the same state.
yep.
Like
It
you
is. We take it
like
for granted.
yeah. Yeah, we totally do. And so it's like we're driving, we get up to IKEA, and I, like an idiot, I ask him, I'm like, have you ever been to an IKEA? And he's like, yeah, I've been to an IKEA. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And he's like, it's how I knew to get my desk from there. I'm like, yeah,
That tracks. Yeah, it tracks.
yeah, that tracks. Yeah, that makes sense. And he's just like, most of my furniture back in Korea is from IKEA. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. And he's just like, have you ever had their meatballs? I'm like, yes, I have. I had it with my parents. And he's like, uh, your guys' IKEAs out here, their food is terrible. That's all he said. And I was like, why is it terrible? He's like, it tastes like cafeteria food. Like
I
it
mean, it is
tastes like
cafeteria food.
and it kind of is, yeah. And he was saying like in Korea, like they have very similar items, but there's like a couple Korean specific things, right? And he was just saying, he's like, it's like actually really good there. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much everything, Yunsung. Like your fast food's probably better. Like you like everything. It's like taken more seriously. Their food is actually taken seriously. It's not just something to eat and let it burn energy in you. You know?
It's treated
Like,
as like something that, it's like, "Oh, we're actually gonna put this in our body, so let's, try and have something
right.
decent."
Exactly. Let's make it good. And so like we get, the whole desk, we get it in the back of my truck. We're driving back and it starts downpouring rain. Like, you know, but I told him, I said, like, Yunsung, like, I don't know what we're gonna do about your desk. Like, you're sure we can't fit it in my cab? Like, and he goes, no, 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 just keep driving, keep driving, keep driving. I'm like, are you sure? Like, dude, I don't want to ruin your desk. Like, I don't, he's like, no, 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 keep driving, keep driving. I'm like, okay. Little did I realize when he was in the South Korean military, he was a truck driver. He drove like big military trucks that were filled with equipment, inventory, whatever it may be. And basically, what he knew that I didn't was that basically the only time rain was really going to touch the top of this cardboard box with his desk in it was if we were practically at a standstill or going below like 10 miles an hour. Otherwise, the rain and everything is whooshing past. It's not doing so. Like when we got to a stoplight coming off the exit ramp, that's when he looked in the bed of the truck and was like, like, how wet is it getting? Like, oh, geez, like, I can't believe it's still raining this hard. And so we get it in, and he was right, man. We pull his desk out of this box that I was shocked that it wasn't even more drenched than what it was. And his desk was perfectly fine. Like,
There you go.
wasn't wet at all, like, had everything. And I'm just like, what the heck? And he was like beyond appreciative that I went and got this. I saved him a bunch of money. We got this desk. And so again, he's like, yeah, you got to come over and eat. I'll make you dinner. I'll, do whatever. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, yeah. And so like we start, hanging out again and we're doing all that. And then it was like, I just remember the last meal that I had with him, we ate uh basically like I think it is called like a kimbap, right? Which is their version of like it's like a sushi roll, but it's vegetables, it's really thick, it's got egg. Um but yeah, it basically is like this seaweed roll, but it's just stuffed with stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like we're sitting there and I'm eating that and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is super good." And he's like, "Yeah, no, it's cuz it's got eggs." I was like, "Oh, right." And I'm like going through it and I just remember that was when I had told him. I said, "Yeah, hey, do you remember that girl I was hanging out with a lot in my dorm, at the beginning of this like fall semester and the end of last semester?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, 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 the one that you were, like, texting over the summer." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, the one that didn't respond." I'm like, "Right."
You didn't have to call that out.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Yunsung. Like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, no, we're dating now. We're boyfriend and girlfriend, and we're dating, which is now my wife, my lovely
Yeah.
wife, Kaylee. And I told him that, and he was like, oh, congrats, that's great. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, like I'll have to bring her over sometime. Like, we got to do this, and it was like, he's just like, yeah, yeah, sure, da, da, da. And so it's like, as I was hanging out with my girlfriend more, and there were more like college stuff I had to do. I was at the journalism school, the SOJC. And so like I'm working for like 3 different magazines. I'm doing all my coursework. I've got my girlfriend. I'm looking for jobs because I know I'm graduating soon. I'm like doing all this stuff. And I just remembered it was almost like the last month. Not only was it a blur, but like I just remember feeling like I was going a million miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just trying to get all these things done and I'm just trying to do all this stuff. And then it was like the last day I've got my truck kind of like, stuffed with all my crap trying to leave. And I just remember in the back of my head, I was like, I need to stop by Yunsung's. I need to go by Yunsung and see if he's still there. Like I'm going to try to text him see what's going on. And I text him. He had already been gone for like a week. He went back to South Korea. His term was over, basically. Like he was like, yeah, no, like yeah, my term was done like a week ago. But I'll be back next year to finish up. I've got one more term to go, and I get to finish up my doctorate. And I'm like, well, I'm done, man. Like I graduated. I'm like, but Kaylee, she's still, gonna be here. So hopefully whenever I visit, I can come and see you and like, do that whole thing. And he's like, yeah, sounds good. And that was it. That was the last time I talked to him. And there was a time my wife, she moved into an apartment with one of her friends, and that was like her junior year. And I remember going down to visit her, and when I went down there, I was like, oh, I'm going to text Yunsung just to like, I may not be able to see him this time, but we can try to set something up. And I text him, and I never got a response. And so I text him again, and I'm like, hey, like, this is Devin, like, just to let you know. And I got a message back that just said, you've got the wrong number. And all I could think was like, he had to get a new phone for whatever reason. It's a different number now. And so for, man, months and months and months, I sat there and I thought, like, how do I get back into touch with Yunsan? Like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? And of course, it's not like a driving thought, just because I hadn't seen him for quite a while, right? Like 8 months to a year. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I wonder how I'm going to get. Well, I pull up Skype to talk to one of my other buddies, and I realized that I actually had like a couple of Skype calls with him. And I was like, oh, like I could pull that up and try to figure out, where he's at and what's going on. And it would literally just ring into oblivion. It would never pick up. And I'm just like, does he not have a computer with Skype on it? Like, does he not have like, I don't know. Because it was my name and my picture, and it was his name and his picture. So I was like, we know each other. And yeah, just completely. I'm going to drink my coffee here. Hold on a second. With my good. I can and I will massive mug. Oh, good coffee. It's Italian coffee, Kimbo. Oh, it's so good.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, I completely lost touch with him. And over the years, like when he pops into my mind, I go on Facebook and I'll be like, Yunsung Lee. And there are apparently a ton of Yunsung Lees, and none of them have a picture of a 6'4", 6'5" Korean guy. Like, I cannot, I can't find him. I can't. Yeah. I know he was in Seoul, and he finished his doctorate. He had to have by now. And so I wonder if he's like a famous professor in Seoul, South Korea right now. And I'm saying all this stuff, and I don't know, one of his students, like, I don't care anybody, because now it's like I talk with my wife. We watch K-dramas all the time.
Oh, of course.
I eat my Korean food all the time, all this stuff. And so my wife has thrown the idea out there a couple times of like, one of these days, I don't know when, but like we should go to South Korea and Japan. Like, it'd be really cool. And I'm like, yeah, like that would be amazing. And yet there's this part of me that's like, I want to find Yunsung first. Like,
yeah.
I want to be able, because like there's a part of me that feels like he visited the US, and it's like he was kind of like, even though he was there for his own reasons and all those good things, it's like he met me on my land. And so it's like, I want to meet him on his, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I have not been able to find him. And so it's one of those things where, like I said, probably even today, like we'll get done with this call and I'll probably like pull up Twitter and try to look around like, yeah. But like, I will say from the deepest part of my heart and my gullet, I miss Yansa. He was such a good friend, and he helped me out, like I said, in innumerable ways. The only way I paid him back is I saved him like $250 on a delivery charge. But in all the other ways that he paid me, I'm never going to be able to repay him.
I'll challenge that. He was here by himself,
Right.
other side
Yeah.
of the world from home, and you were his friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and obviously, friendship, real friendship isn't like a, I owe you this, you owe me this. It's not
Right.
that.
Yeah. It's not an exchange every time. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
think about how many meals that he may have eaten alone were it not for you.
Right.
Even just, even you think about this. I know, Devin, you're a food guy. I know you love food. Do
Yeah.
you enjoy getting to share food that you love with people?
Oh, totally. Yeah. There's nothing more fulfilling. Oh,
So
totally. Yeah.
I want you to think about that though.
Yeah.
If
I
think about
know.
how it feels for you to get to share stuff that you enjoy with other people. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, it's not a there are no scales here. There's no evening things
Right.
out. It's not that.
Yeah.
You gave him friendship, and
Yeah. Yeah. And
did
he gave it right back. That's for sure. Yeah. And like I said, especially for the time being, like you mentioned, like for the both of us, I think we both felt very just isolated. I think
yeah,
you don't feel alone because there's like all these students everywhere, but you definitely feel kind of like I am pushing through my own endeavors.
yeah.
And but no, I mean, yeah, yeah, man.
Well, and it's you can feel alone around a lot of people,
Oh, totally.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think at that time in your life, I mean, in college, it's especially easy. Even when you've got friends around you, it's especially easy, I think, to feel alone because you.
Oh, totally.
I don't want to speak for you out, but I'm projecting a little bit from my own college experience, but I know what it's like to
Yeah.
feel like I have no clue who I am. I am still trying to figure
Oh,
that out.
yeah.
Did
Yup. A lot of anxieties of what you're going to do,
Yeah,
right? Like they tell you your whole life, like
yeah,
go to college, do this thing. And then you're like in the middle of doing it and you're like, well, like when I get done with this, I'm just getting a piece of paper.
yeah.
Like,
A really expensive piece of paper.
yeah, super expensive piece of paper. And I have no idea how I'm going to go about paying that back, like, and doing all
Yeah.
this stuff. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
Did the two of you ever? So clearly, you had a special friendship, and like we said, it sounds like he was more that big brother mentor. And did the two
Yeah.
of you ever talk about that? Like actually call it out, like, hey, this is a special friendship, or this is how I view you, or I just appreciate it. Did you ever call that out?
I think in small ways. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like there was one time where we were walking around campus and I saw him like across the way, which for me was like a rare sighting. I hardly ever saw him on campus because he was like already in the building where he taught, or he was back at the dorm. Like I never saw him anywhere else. And so I saw him and I called him over, and I'm like, hey man, like come here. And he comes over and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And we're like, hey, let's go to this like froyo place, whatever. And pretty much every time we went anywhere to eat, like I said, he paid. He always
yeah,
paid. And his thing was like, you're younger than me. I need to pay. And like he always did that. And we're sitting down and I've got like this huge froyo thing of like, I don't know, I know me. So it's probably like cotton candy, cake batter, and like who knows what with like gummy bears over the top. And for him, he's got like a matcha tea, like green thing. And then he has like vanilla and then like chocolate, and he has like little sprinkles. And that's like his like, whoa, crazy froyo. Like, whoa. And he's just like, and I just remember him saying, and it was like one of the only times that he used like what I would consider a Devin joke. And he just said, I'm an adult, Devin. That's all he said. Because we joked around all the time that like I loved like I would eat stuff that only small kids like thoroughly enjoyed. You know, if somebody sat there and was like, "Hey, we're actually making a new shot. It's going to be called like the cotton candy haymaker." I'm like, "Oh, that is so me. I'm going to try that. This is going to be amazing." And if it was something like super serious, like, yes, the next shot we have is a Ernest Hemingway. That was more Yunsun. He'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll try that.
So you're
I'll
more
have a
that you eat like a 6-year-old that got Freaky Friday into an adult's body.
Right.
I can
Exactly.
relate.
Like,
I can
yeah,
relate.
yeah, yeah. And but no, I mean, and it was like one of those things where like we would talk about different things, and all the time I would catch myself assuming stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I would be like we talked about barbecue, and I was telling them about like Missouri style barbecue, which is a culmination of like all the southern ones. So Texas is black pepper and salt. Obviously, you got your Carolinas, you got your mustard based, vinegar based.
Big fan.
Yeah, all those things. And so Missouri, it's like beef, pork, chicken, turkey, you name it, we've got it, right? And so I'm explaining that, and he goes, "Yeah, barbecue in Korea, it's really expensive." And I'm like, "Well, in the U.S., like it's not cheap, but it's not like super expensive." And he's like, "Yeah, no, in Korea, it's pretty expensive." And I'm like, "Why?" Like, and I'm asking him why. And and he just like I just remember the look on his face. He kind of like I could tell that he was like,
Was he processing?
"Devin, yeah, like Devin, me and you, we're talking about two different types of barbecue. Like, like you're talking about your down home country hillbilly whatever barbecue. I'm talking about Korean barbecue where we use like Wagyu beef, and you're
Oh,
putting it on a thing, and you're like, you're indoors, and you're like, you have a vent, and there's like all this stuff, and he just, he like, yeah, he just had this look on his face of like, like, Devin, you moron. Like, you're talking as if we have American barbecue in Korea. Like, no, like we have Korean barbecue. We find our barbecue to be way more superior than your American barbecue, whatever. And like, and he starts describing like what Korean barbecue is to me. And I'm like, "Man, that's way more efficient. Like, you're just cooking it like right in front of you." And he's like, "Yeah, it's way more efficient." And I'm like, "Yeah, because like our barbecue, you put it in a smoker, it sits for like 10 hours, and then you gotta like, and he's just like, "Yeah, no, we don't do that in Korea."
yeah, but
Like,
patience is part of the flavor, you know?
exactly,
That
exactly. Yeah.
but that being said,
Yeah.
Korean barbecue is absolutely incredible. I love
Yeah,
Korean
it
barbecue.
is. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's amazing. And like I said, at the time I was completely ignorant to that stuff. I didn't know what Korean barbecue was. So like
Yeah.
as he's talking about Korean barbecue, I'm thinking in my head that there's like some Korean guy out in the back, somewhere in some restaurant in Seoul, and he's like, "Well, better get my hickory out." So it's good. Like,
I love
no,
that even
no.
I love that the Korean guy in your head just doing the barbecue, he still has a southern accent. I
Oh,
love
it's
that.
yeah, you can't not have a southern
Yeah.
accent when you're doing that stuff. You could be from Boston. You could be from Boston, and it's like, "Oh, I gotta get my old hickory." No, 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 no. You say, "Hey, big, get my old hickory out." You gotta have that. But yeah, but it was like I just remember, like I said, he didn't challenge my assumptions. He basically just would give me this look of like, we're talking about two different things again. Like this
Yeah.
is like you're talking about your thing and you think it's my thing. Like I can hear it in your voice. You think that you're describing my thing, and I'm here to tell you that it's not, and I'm still trying to describe it to you and you're not catching on. Like,
I
and
love
I
it.
wasn't. I was swinging and missing just left and right.
But you were trying and you had good intentions. And that's
I
gotta
did.
count for
I did.
something.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, it made things funnier. You have like inside jokes with them, and you know when you're playing ping pong or whatever, I'll be like, yeah, I beat you today, young son. You owe me Korean barbecue. Like you gotta, you make little jabs here and there, and yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, like, it's like I've said, I used to say that I don't think he knew this either. So if he's listening somehow, I hope he knows this still, because it is true to this day. Like, anytime I talk to friends of mine or my wife or my parents or what, I always said he was the most interesting man in the world. Like, he is the Dos Equis guy to me. Like, he was the most interesting guy in the world because he knew all these languages. He was in the military. He, like, yeah, he was a doctorate. Like, yeah, like, he's the most interesting guy in the world. Like, yeah, it was like, I looked up to him a lot. He was such a cool dude and just such a great guy. And yeah, yeah, I miss him. I miss him a lot. And like I said, I'm hoping nothing, bad's happened or anything like that. I hope, like I said, one of these days that if I can find him, I would love to, wherever he's at, if he moved out of Seoul and he's in a different part of, South Korea, what have it. I would do a lot of things and spend I don't know how much money to try to visit and see him again. It would be great. Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me to the last question I have for you.
Yeah.
If you could find them, whether it's in South Korea, in the United States, in France, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. It
If
could
you
be
had a chance
France.
to sit down and have one more meal with them, what would that ideal meal be?
Man. So I think what I would do, I would try to have a meal that me and him never had. And I know that he mentioned it once, which is Sam. I think I would eat Sam with him. It's SSAM. And it is leaf lettuce and pork, and you put the pork in the leaf lettuce with kimchi, with some like sauce. They have it. It's like a fermented bean, soybean, like almost like a teriyaki type of like paste. You put it in there, and it's like a wrap. It's like a leaf wrap, and you eat the whole thing. And like Dave Chang of Momofuku fame, his
Yeah.
second restaurant was Sambar, and that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to make the Som as popular as burritos, like Chipotle and that kind of thing. And I think that's what I would have. I would have all the banchan, right? All the banchans of like, green onion kimchi, regular kimchi, radish kimchi, all those things, maybe a couple things of the fermented fish or the, pickled radish and other things like that. Maybe some bibimbap, maybe just like a little side thing of bibimbap, which is extravagant. But yeah, and then some som. I would like to share that communal thing of like you dig into the pork with your leaf wrap, whether it's butter lettuce or iceberg, whatever, and you just put all your things in there. I think that's what I would have with them. That would be like, yeah, that would be the thing I would have with them. Yeah.
Well,
And have
Devin, I'll say
Korean
that.
beer. Korean
Oh
beer.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we gotta wash it
and
down.
right, wash down with some soju. Soju. Yeah, yeah, that's their rice liquor out there, the soju. Yeah. Oh, man.
Devin, I'm just gonna say, I hope that one day you get to have that meal with them.
I know. Me too, man. Yeah. If I do, I will be documenting the living hell out of it. I'll be
Please
taking
do.
pictures with me and him, and like, yeah, I'll be doing, because I will. I think, yeah, I'd be so happy to just even chat with him again, let alone visit and see him and everything. Like, that would be, yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah. It's yeah, it's a goal. It's something to strive towards.
When that happens, let me know. I would
Oh
love
yeah.
to. I would love to hear that
Yeah.
that's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, right here at the end, I do want to make sure I've got time. I want to promote Culinary Convo. I said at the beginning, I'll say it again. Such a fun podcast, such a thoughtful podcast. You want to go and
Yeah.
plug?
Oh yeah, full plug mode. Go to culinaryconvo.com. Go there, see all of our episodes, sign up for our newsletter. Every episode, the next one coming up this week, See, oh my gosh, I caught myself off guard. What is my next episode this week? Oh no. Oh, that's what it is. Plate in Time, 1946. Gonna have, yeah, all the recipes of foods that we talk about through Pinterest. So you can follow us on Pinterest, on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Follow us everywhere. And like I said, the newsletter, I talk about the research a little bit, like what things I found interesting in the research, as well as I provide those Pinterest recipes, because as much as I would love to provide my own recipes, I do enough work. Okay. I do enough work. Here's some Pinterest recipes. Have fun. And then obviously, yeah, like, share, subscribe, rate not only Our Last Meal, but Culinary Convo, rate, because the ratings, as much as we love to see 5 stars, whatever, the more ratings that we get, the higher up the chain people can find you, people can see your stuff. And so it's really great. And so, yeah, all those things. And then lately I've been recapping the Great British Baking Show episodes weekly. And yeah, it's getting tense in the tent. It's getting tense.
Yeah. I mean, they are intense technically.
Yeah. There's been a lot of controversy since Mexican week, and then Halloween week they tried to do American s'mores, and Paul Hollywood, he needs to stop trying to do American desserts.
Don't even get me started on Paul Hollywood.
Man, the s'mores, they were not classic s'mores like American s'mores.
We'll see. Now, we're a couple weeks behind. My wife and I talked about it. I think we're going to try and get caught up today.
Yeah.
We're recording this October 29th, so 2 days before Halloween.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and get caught up today. But yeah, Paul Hollywood, he's in the spirit of the show, he's a real wanker.
He's a wanker. Yeah. And that's the thing is you've probably seen Sandro has been waiting for, a handshake. Yeah. And he's moisturizing. He's doing all sorts of things to get ready. And Paul, yeah, bud. I don't know. And Prue,
I love Prue.
Prue, she's just trying to get tanked every episode.
Prue is life goals.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I am kind of jealous of Prue. Yeah, she gets to wear the colorful glasses, and
she looks fabulous. She is very open about her love of booze, and then she just gets to eat baked goods constantly. I mean,
that is the life,
I don't know,
man. Yeah. And then Noel and Matt, I mean, just hanging out, calling out times.
I will say they've never had a bad. I love the gags that they do. I don't think they've ever had a bad presenter on that show, but Noel and Matt, I love their chemistry together. I think they're so fun together. Really funny. And, I've said before, Noel seems like a real sweetheart of a man. I have to believe he is. I don't ever want to hear anything to the contrary, because in my head, he just seems like such a genuinely nice guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's so grounded. Like he seems very salt of the earth. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's very similar to, people like us, where it's like we see anybody and we're like, yeah, I bet I can relate to them. Like in some way,
And see, that's it. I think everybody's got something that they can relate to somebody about.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And but no, the tent this year, there's years where I feel like I have a front runner that I absolutely just am like head over heels for. And I'm like, I want them to win all the way. And whether they do or don't, as long as I get to watch them along the way, it's fine. This year, there's a lot of good bakers. There's a lot of bakers that I've wanted to win. And so, doing the recaps, it's been pretty fun. It's been good.
Yeah. So everybody go check that out too.
Yeah.
Devin, I'm gonna link up everything Culinary Convo in the show notes. Like I said, I'll be on there in a new episode's coming out very shortly. Utah.
Yeah.
Utah. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Utah was, I tell you, Utah is one of those states that if you're not careful, you're going to ruin some plumbing. And so everybody needs to go and check it out.
Yeah. If you want to understand, what what the plumbing situation is like in Utah,
right.
Culinary Convo.
Culinary Convo. Figure it out before you get there and it's too late.
See, that's actually a good point.
Man.
Culinary Convo. That's your guide if you're going to be traveling within the states. You got to check it
Right.
out. You got to know what
You
to eat and
gotta.
where to eat it.
Yeah. As much as people want to catch up on diners, drive-ins, and dives, or watch like a Bourdain episode of whatever, make Culinary Convo part of that list. That's all
Yeah,
you got to
make it part
do.
of the convo. Honestly,
Make it part of the state convo. Yeah, just do that.
Devin,
Yeah,
always a pleasure to have you on. I appreciate you coming on and talking
absolutely.
about your friends, and like I said, I hope you find them.
I do too. It's very therapeutic. It feels very good to talk about them, especially in this type of like open concept way. When I talk about them with my wife every night, it's like snippets here and there. Like, oh, I remember when Young Sung used to do that. She's like, why didn't you marry Young Sung? I'm like, don't say that. You're. Yeah, I'm just saying he was a good guy. She's like, yeah, he was taller than me. He was skinnier than me. I'm like, Kaylee, please, like, just let me slowly forget about him in my own time. don't
Um,
don't force me to force him out. I'm not trying to
yeah,
do that. Please. Yeah, but no, I appreciate it. It's been great. I love coming on here. I like it when you come on my podcast. It's awesome. Yeah,
Devin, I appreciate that.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, like I said, I can't wait for the next guest coming on here. I hope that whether it's of loss or of somebody who, they've just lost touch or what have you, maybe, yeah, yeah, me and that person, we can just sit by each other and be like, yeah, you miss a person too. I miss my person. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
All right,
it's been a good time.
Devin, I appreciate it. Thanks for being
Absolutely.
on.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you, first of all, to our guest, Devin, for sharing your story and telling us about your friend. I told you at the beginning that this was a great conversation. It always is with Devin. If you enjoyed this talk today, please go listen to his podcast, Culinary Convo. You can find it wherever you stream podcasts, or you can also go to culinaryconvo.com. You can also find Culinary Convo on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. He's all over the social media. Always putting out fun content. He's got a great newsletter that you can sign up for. I just can't say enough good things about Devin. He's just a good dude. Please go check out his content. If you enjoy the show and you like this, please consider following. You can follow Our Last Meal on Twitter and Instagram at Our Last Meal Pod. You can also go to ourlastmeal.com. If you're ever interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can reach out by clicking the Share Your Story button at the top. You can also reach out to me through a direct message on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you can get a carrier pigeon to me, that's fine too. If you're not sure that you would be a good guest, reconsider. Everybody has a story. We've all loved people. We've all loved food. If you're just interested in talking, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. That being said, I am just going to sign off. I know Thanksgiving in the United States is coming up next week, so I usually like to tell people to take the time to share a meal with someone you care about. I hope for you that in the next week you can share a large meal with multiple people you care about and enjoy your Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, or if you're not in the United States and it's not time, I hope you will go out and have a meal with someone you care about. Regardless, thank you for listening today. Have a great week.